What's up, guys, and welcome back to Will Sports Talk. So we are officially in week 2 of the college football season. Sorry I missed week 0 and week 1. I've been sick lately, so I haven't been able to record. But overall, I'm feeling better, and I'm back. And in this video, since I missed the last couple of weeks, I want to go over and recap some of the games that happened in week 0 and in week 1. And then I'm going to go into my predictions for week 2. And then to conclude the video, I want to give my college football playoff predictions that I actually made in the preseason before football actually started. So without being said, let's get started. Now, to kick off week 0, we had Notre Dame versus Navy. Notre Dame won this game 42-3. They dominated this game from start to finish. Sam Hartman, transfer quarterback out of Wake Forest, making his debut for Notre Dame. He looked very, very good for Notre Dame in this game. He actually went 19 for 23. He passed for 251 yards, 4 touchdowns, and did not have a pick in this game. So like I said, looked very, very good. If he continues this path that he's on and he continues to play really good and he can lead Notre Dame to wins over an Ohio State and a Clemson, which, judging after I watched Clemson the other day, I believe that Clemson game is very winnable for Notre Dame. But if he can win those big games and continue the way he's playing and maybe possibly take Notre Dame to a college football playoff, I believe Sam Hartman is very much in the conversation for a Heisman Trophy. He played very, very well for Notre Dame in this game. Running back, Audric Estime, he had 16 carries for 95 yards and a touchdown. Wide receiver, Jaden Greathouse, he had 5 receptions for 98 yards, 2 touchdowns. So very, very explosive offense for Notre Dame. I expect this offense to be very, very good this season under Sam Hartman. So defensively for Notre Dame, Jack Kaiser led the team with 8 tackles. He had 6 solo tackles. Notre Dame actually outgained Navy in this game 444 yards to 169. So their offense looked really, really good. And another key to this game, which led to a very lopsided victory for Notre Dame, was Notre Dame on third downs. They went 5 for 7, and they actually held Navy to 4 and 14 on third down. So that was a very, very vital part in this victory for Notre Dame. So overall, Notre Dame looked very, very good. I expect them to have a very good season after watching this game. Good victory for Notre Dame. My next game on my list that I'm going over is San Jose State and USC. Now, USC, they ended up winning pretty big. They won 56-28 against San Jose State. Their offense, once again, very explosive. I said there was not going to be a drop-off on the offense. Obviously, there is not. Quarterback Caleb Williams, he picked up right where he left off from last year. He went 18 for 25. He had 278 yards passing, 4 touchdowns, no picks. He is absolutely still right back in the Heisman conversation. Right now, he's still the front runner. He played very, very well for USC. He was very explosive. And running back, Austin Jones, he had 6 carries for 54 yards and 2 touchdowns. Wide receiver, Taj Washington, he led the team with 2 receptions, 85 yards, and a touchdown. So like I said, offense is very explosive. Defensively for USC, I said in the preseason, before games even started, that this USC defense was going to be the reason they did not win any kind of championship and they won't make the playoff. And as of right now, it turns out I'm right. They gave up 28 points to a San Jose State team. You can't do that if you expect to win championship games. USC, they gave up 396 total yards of offense to San Jose State, and they did not force a turnover. They were not able to force a turnover. They gave up 198 rushing yards to San Jose State. San Jose State outgained USC 198 rushing yards to 160. That has got to improve if USC expects to get to the Pac-12 championship and if they expect to get to the college football playoff. As of right now, as it stands with this USC defense, if it does not improve, they are not beating an Oregon, they are not beating a Washington, and they are not beating a Utah. This defense has got to get better. San Jose State, their quarterback, Sivan Kador, he went 21 for 38, 198 yards, and 3 touchdowns. No picks. Halfback, Quali Conley, he had 6 carries for 108 yards. Wide receiver, Nick Nash, he had 6 receptions for 89 yards and 3 touchdowns. Defensively for San Jose State, Brian Parham, he led the team with 9 tackles, actually had 8 solo tackles. So, like I said, offensive, very explosive for USC. Defensive side of the ball still has major issues that need to be addressed. I still don't like Alex Grinch, but overall, it was still a good win for USC. Third game that I'm going to talk about is Vanderbilt, Hawaii. Now, Vanderbilt, they actually pulled this game out 35-28. A much different result from last year, where Vanderbilt won the game 63-10. So this was a very much improved Hawaii team from last year. A.J. Swan, Vanderbilt's quarterback, he actually played very well for Vanderbilt. He went 19 for 30, 258 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Wide receiver, Gowan, he had 6 receptions for 72 yards. Will Shepard, Vanderbilt's star wide receiver, was just behind him with 6 receptions, 68 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Will Shepard. Will Shepard is a NFL caliber wide receiver. He is going to be very, very good for Vanderbilt this year. If Vanderbilt makes a bowl game this year, he's going to be a big contributor in that. So Will Shepard is very, very good. But the problem with Vanderbilt's offense this year is they've got to find a way to establish a running game. They are very much lacking a running game this year. And yes, I know that they lost Ray Davis in the offseason. He transferred to Auburn. But they've got to find a way to replace him. Patrick Smith, he had 7 carries for 30 yards and a touchdown. Vanderbilt only had 39 rushing yards the whole game. So they've got to find a way to run the ball so they can find some balance in this offense, and they don't have to put so much pressure on AJ Swan, because that's got to happen if they want to find a way to make a bowl game. Defensively for Notre Dame, C.J. Taylor, he led the team with 9 tackles. He had 4 solo tackles. He had 1 sack, and he had 2.5 tackles for loss. Vanderbilt, they also forced 1 fumble, which Hawaii was able to recover. Vanderbilt, they also had 2 interceptions. 1 was on that final drive for Hawaii for Vanderbilt to seal the win, 35-28. And Vanderbilt, they also had a kickoff return, a 97-yard kickoff return by Jaden McGowan. And that 97-yard kickoff return is actually Vanderbilt's first kickoff return since 2014. Now, going over to Hawaii, on that side, Hawaii's quarterback actually played pretty well, too. Quarterback, Braden Shager, he actually went 25 for 37. He had 351 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, but he did have 2 picks, which was very costly for Hawaii. Halfback, Landon Sims, he had 9 carries, 38 yards. Wide receiver, Polefe Ashlock, he had 7 receptions, 127 yards, and a touchdown. So the offense was pretty good for Hawaii. Vanderbilt was just able to step up defensively when they needed to, when the game mattered. Defensively for Hawaii, Isaiah Tufaga, he led the team with 8 tackles, 2 sacks, and 3 tackles for loss. So overall, good win for Vanderbilt. Again, they do have a little ways to go, both on the offensive side of the ball and defensive side of the ball. Got to establish balance on offense. Secondary for Vanderbilt, got to get a little bit better. Run defense, they have a lot to improve if they want to make a bowl game, but overall, good win for Vanderbilt. Now, going into week 1, the first game to kick off week 1, Florida and Utah. Utah won this game 24-11, a much different result from last year, where Florida pulled that game out 29-26. Graham Mertz for Florida, the transfer from Wisconsin, he looked pretty good in this game. He looked pretty good in the first half, not so much in the second half. He went 31 for 44 passing for 333 yards, a touchdown, and 1 pick. Halfback Trevor Etienne, he had 7 carries for 25 yards. Florida actually ended the game with a total of 21 yards rushing the whole game. And wide receiver Ricky Parasol, he had 8 receptions for 92 yards. So the problem for Florida, just like Vanderbilt, is they've got to find a way to establish a running game. They've got to be able to run the ball to establish a balanced offense. They've got to improve on that aspect if they want to find a way to get bowl eligible and win a bowl game. That offense has got to get better. Now, defensively for Florida, Shamar James, he led the team with 13 tackles. He had six solo tackles. He had 1.5 tackles for loss. For Utah, quarterback Bryson Barnes, he stepped in to replace the injured Cam Rising. He played very well for Utah. He actually went 12 for 18, 159 yards and a touchdown. Halfback Nate Johnson, he had 6 carries, 45 yards and a touchdown. Wide receiver Money Parks, he led the team with 1 reception and still led the team for 70 yards and a touchdown. And that 1 reception was actually the first play of Utah's offensive possession. On the first play, Utah took a deep shot and absolutely burnt Florida's secondary for a touchdown, a Utah touchdown. So, Florida's defense, especially the secondary, the secondary, as the game went on, they played better. But this secondary has to improve for Florida if they want to get back to a bowl game. Now, defensively for Utah, Cole Bishop, he led the team. He had 11 tackles. He had 9 solo tackles. He had 1 sack and 1 tackle for loss. Overall, Florida was able to move the ball pretty well against Utah's defense. They just were not able to punch it in, but they were able to move the ball pretty well. What killed Florida in this game is, number 1, penalties. Penalties were a major factor in this game. And the other thing that killed Florida is their red zone offense. Florida, like I said, Florida was able to move the ball pretty good, but they get in the end zone, they stalled. They've got to figure out a way to punch it in the end zone when they get inside the 20-yard line. So, overall, good win for Utah. Florida's got some issues to fix, but good win for Utah. Second game in week 1 is TCU and Colorado. Now, this is actually a game that I sort of got wrong. I expected Colorado to cover in this game, but I actually thought TCU would actually pull it out. But Colorado did get the win, 45 to 42. Excuse me. This was Deion Sanders' first win as head coach at Colorado. He made a pretty good statement in his first game. And this first game is huge because when Deion came in, he actually brought in 87 new players with him. So he completely flipped this whole roster. Wiped everybody out, started from scratch. And it paid off in the TCU game. Now, quarterback Shadir Sanders, he absolutely balled out in this game. He played exceptionally well. He went 38 for 47, a school record for Colorado, 510 passing yards. He also had 4 touchdowns and no interceptions. So, that passing offense is very, very good. Halfback, Sevion Wilkerson, he had 12 carries for 45 yards and a touchdown. Wide receiver, Dylan Edwards, he had 5 receptions, 135 yards, 3 touchdowns. And Colorado, in this first game, they actually had 4 100-yard wide receivers in a game for the first time in Colorado history. So that passing offense is explosive. And one reason that offense is so explosive is because they have the number 1 recruit from a few years ago, Travis Hunter. Travis Hunter, hybrid player, plays both sides of the ball. He played very well. He plays wide receiver and corner for Colorado. Had a very good game. He actually, on the offensive side of the ball, had 11 receptions for 119 yards. And then on the defensive side of the ball, at corner, he actually had 3 tackles. He had 1 solo tackle, and he had 1 interception. So Travis Hunter played very well. And Travis Hunter, he actually played over 120 snaps in this game. So he played a lot in this game. So as the season progresses, I expect Travis Hunter to be very good for Utah. And I mean, for Colorado, excuse me. And I expect him to be a very big contributor for Colorado. Defensively for Colorado, Shiloh Sanders, Deion Sanders' other son, he actually led the team in tackles. He had 10 tackles, 9 solo tackles. And Colorado's defense, although they were shaky most of the game, they stepped up when they needed to step up. They had that big 4th down stop to win the game. And Colorado's defense also had 2 interceptions. So that defense stepped up when it needed to, and Colorado pulled out the win. Now, on TCU, on their side, TCU, their quarterback, they had to replace Max Duggan. They had Chandler Morris. Chandler Morris, he played okay. He didn't play great. He went 24 for 42. He had 279 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, but he also had 2 picks. Halfback, Amani Bailey, he had 14 carries, 164 yards. Wide receiver, J.P. Richardson, 6 receptions for 63 yards. Defensively for TCU, they have a lot to fix on the defensive side of the ball. A lot. But Johnny Hodges, he actually led the team in tackles. He had 9 tackles overall. He had 5 solo tackles. He also had 1 sack and 1 tackle for loss. Overall, in this game, TCU, like I mentioned, they have a lot to fix on defense. It was very, very bad and inconsistent. Considering this defense is pretty experienced, they returned 9 starters from last year, and they returned almost everybody in the secondary. So it's got to improve. This defensive line did not play very well for TCU. This defensive line was only able to get to the quarterback 4 times this whole game. The tackling was not very good at all in this game. This defense has got to improve if they want to find a way to get back to the Big 12 championship game, which I mentioned in the preseason I didn't think they would. But this defense has got to improve if they want to make it back to the Big 12 title game. Now, the offense is explosive. They've got pieces on the offense, but the defense needs major, major work. On my next game I want to talk about is North Carolina, South Carolina. Now, I expected this game to be a little bit closer than it was. I expected North Carolina to pull it out, but I expected this game to be a little bit closer than it was. North Carolina, they actually won 31-17. South Carolina quarterback Spencer Rattler, he played okay. He went 30 for 39. He had 353 passing yards. He didn't have a touchdown, but he also didn't have a pick. So he didn't play too horrible. Running back, Kerryon Joyner, he had 12 carries for 23 yards and a touchdown. Wide receiver, Xavier Legette, he had 9 receptions for 178 yards. So the offense, they played okay. They've got some issues they need to fix as far as running the ball goes. They've got to find a way to get that fixed. Defensively for South Carolina, Debo Williams led the team with 14 tackles. He had 8 solo tackles and 1 tackle for loss. K'Wan Banks, he had 1 interception. O'Donnell Fortune, he also had a pick, so they had 2 picks overall. UNC, on their side, Heisman hopeful, Drake May at quarterback. He played pretty well. He didn't play great. He went 24 for 32. He had 269 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, but he also had 2 picks in the game. So he's got to clean that up as the season progresses. But the thing about this, his 2 interceptions, is one of the 2 interceptions was really not his fault. He threw the ball, it hit the wide receiver's hands, it bounced, and the corner was able to pick it up. So one of them was really not his fault. But they also had halfback British Brooks. He had 15 carries for 103 yards. Wide receiver Kobe Paysauer, 7 receptions, 66 yards, and a touchdown. Defensively for North Carolina, actually played a lot better than I expected in the preseason. This defense, as it looks right now, is very much improved than last year. This defense, Cedric Gray, he actually led the team in tackles. He had 9 tackles, 3 solo tackles, 1.5 sacks, and 1.5 tackles for loss. The defensive line looked a lot better from last year. They were able to generate pressure, get to the quarterback. They actually got to Spencer Rattler and sacked him 9 times in this game. So this defense, as it looks right now, is very much improved. If this continues for North Carolina, I expect it to be a very, very good season for North Carolina. But overall, good win for North Carolina. Next game I want to talk about is LSU and Florida State. Now, this game I did not expect at all. I expected Florida State to win the game, don't get me wrong. But I did not expect them to win in which the fashion they won. Florida State won this game 45-24. Jordan Travis, quarterback for Florida State, he looked very, very good in this game. He went 23 for 31, 342 yards, 4 touchdowns. He did have 1 pick, and he also had a rushing touchdown. But that 1 pick, I mean, to me, it really doesn't mean much. It was on his, first or second pass of the game. It was a screen pass. The defender was in the right place at the right time. But after he shook that off, he played exceptionally well. If Jordan Travis keeps this up and he can take Florida State to an ACC championship or a college football playoff, he could be a Heisman contender. He's looking at New York if he keeps this caliber of play up. He played very, very well for Florida State. Running back, Trey Benson, he had 12 carries for 47 yards. Florida State, they had 135 total rushing yards and 2 touchdowns overall as a team. So, very, very good there. Wide receiver, Keon Coleman, transfer from Michigan State, played very well for Florida State. He had 9 receptions, 122 yards, 3 touchdowns. So he played very well in his first game at Florida State. So this offense for Florida State, very explosive. I don't think it's going anywhere. Defensively for Florida State, Tatum Bethune, he led the team in tackles. He had 9 tackles. Actually had 3 solo tackles. Renardo Green, he actually had an interception for Florida State. So, Florida State, I expect if they keep playing at this caliber of ball, going into the season, I mentioned in the preseason in one of my videos that I see Florida State splitting with Clemson. And I said in the preseason, if Florida State can find a way to go at least 3-1 or 4-0 in these first 4 games, watch out. Since Florida State won this game, they are going to be a dangerous, dangerous team. And the way they performed against LSU and the way Clemson looked against Duke the other day, this Florida State team is going undefeated through the regular season. This Florida State team is not losing a game in the regular season. And I can see them sweeping Clemson, if Clemson even makes the ACC title. At this point, unless Clemson shows me improvement, which I know it's early in the year, if Clemson does not show me improvement, I don't even think Clemson makes it to the ACC title. So at this point, I can see a Florida State UNC game for the ACC title. But as it stands right now, if Florida State keeps this up, they're going undefeated in the regular season. I'm very confident in that. And I could very much see an ACC title for Florida State and undefeated going into the playoff. I told y'all this Florida State team was really good, and it's looking like they're really, really good. LSU, their quarterback, Jaden Daniels, he went 22 for 37, 346 yards, a touchdown, also threw an interception. He also had 15 carries for 64 yards, actually led the team in rushing. Halfback Josh Williams, he had 4 carries for 44 yards. Wide receiver Brian Thomas Jr., he had 7 receptions, 142 yards, and a touchdown. Wide receiver Aaron Anderson, transfer out of Alabama, in his first game as an LSU Tiger, he didn't play too well. He lost a fumble to actually lose a possession for LSU. Aaron Anderson played okay on the special teams part. He had 3 returns for 39 yards. But the big reason LSU lost this game, is they were not very good on third down at all. They were 3 for 10 on third down. That's got to get fixed if LSU wants to find a way to get back to the SEC championship. Fourth down was a major story in this game. LSU went for fourth down, went forward on fourth down twice in the first half in the red zone. It was like a 4th and 1, 4th and 2, both times in the red zone. They go for it. They get sacked both times. If I'm Brian Kelly, and I know it probably wouldn't have made a difference in this game, if I'm Brian Kelly, I'm kicking a field goal in that situation. I'm not going for it that early in the game. I'm kicking a field goal in that situation. But fourth down killed them. LSU, they were leading 17-14 at half. But in that second half, Florida State actually turned it on big time. Florida State's defense stepped it up tremendously. They only allowed 1 touchdown in that second half by LSU. In that second half, Florida State actually outscored LSU 31-7. LSU, they have some major defensive issues to fix if they want to get back to the SEC championship and quite possibly the college football playoff, which, judging by the SEC West, if they get their defensive issues fixed, they could possibly get back to the SEC championship game. But I don't see a college football playoff for LSU. So, like I said, overall, defensively, they've got a lot to fix. It was a very good win for Florida State. Now, the last game I want to talk about was actually the shocker of the weekend, if you ask me. The Clemson-Duke game. Duke actually found a way to pull this out, 28-7. And if you watch this game was not really close from start to finish. Duke played really well. Duke's quarterback, Riley Leonard, He went 17 for 33, had 175 yards. He didn't have a touchdown, but he didn't have a pick either. He also had 8 carries for 98 yards and a touchdown. He led the team in rushing. Their halfback, Jordan Waters, he had 11 carries for 63 yards and a touchdown. Duke, they had 199 yards overall rushing the ball as a team. So Clemson's defense has got to get better on that aspect. Jordan Waters, he also had 3 receptions for 46 yards. Jalen Calhoun, he had 5 receptions for 32 yards. Defensively for Duke, R.J. Oben, he led the team with 1 tackle. He had 1 tackle for loss and 1 sack. Duke's defense also forced 2 lost fumbles. So turnovers, still a major problem for Clemson. Clemson, their quarterback, Cade Klubnik, his first game as an official starter, replacing DJU for Clemson, didn't play great. He went 27 for 43. He had 209 yards passing. Had a touchdown, but he also threw an interception. Halfback Will Shipley, he played pretty decent. He had 17 carries, 114 yards. He didn't have a touchdown. Wide receiver Antonio Williams, he led the team in receptions. He had 7 receptions for 56 yards. Defensively for Clemson, Jeremiah Trotter, he had 1 tackle. Overall, this game, honestly, when Garrett Riley was hired for Clemson, I expected that hire to fix Clemson's offense pretty significantly. But I watched that game, and as it looks right now, I was totally wrong. Clemson's offense still looks mediocre. They still have turnover problems. That still has not gotten fixed. They're still very turnover prone. Garrett Riley's offense the other day, his play calling was very conservative. Clemson's offense just looked mediocre overall. They had dropped balls by the receivers. Clemson's offense was able to drive the ball down the field. But once again, a problem like Florida, they get in the red zone, they choke. They couldn't punch it in the end zone. And I mentioned the turnover problems for Clemson. Clemson had 2 fumbles. They had 1 interception. They had 2 field goals blocked. So they've got to get that fixed, and Duke was able to capitalize off those mistakes. And if it wasn't for that muff punt by Duke, Clemson wouldn't even got on the scoreboard. So Clemson, has major problems on the offense to fix if they want to get back to the ACC championship game. With this Clemson team, I don't see a playoff at all. But they've got to get these problems fixed if they want to make the ACC championship game. And honestly, I think Dabo is at the point to where if this Clemson team has another 2-3 loss season, Dabo better be watching out, because I think if they have another 2-3 loss season this year, he's on the hot seat. So they've got to get these problems fixed, and they've got to get them fixed fast if Dabo wants to save his job, in my opinion. Now that I've gone over these games from these past few weeks, I'm going to make my week 2 predictions for this coming up week. I've got 5 games here that I want to go over. This first game that I've got listed here is Nebraska, Colorado. Colorado is a 3.5 point favorite. I expect a kind of a high scoring game here. I expect kind of a back and forth type game. I expect kind of a high scoring game here. I like the minus 3.5 for Colorado. Late in the game, I expect Colorado to make a stop when they need to. Like I said, I like the minus 3.5 for Colorado. I expect Colorado to pull this out. The next game I have listed here is Ole Miss and Tulane. Right now, Ole Miss is a 7.5 point favorite over Tulane. Another high-scoring game, I think. I expect a high-scoring game here. 2 very explosive offenses. In the end, now, the beginning of the week, I was honestly leaning Ole Miss in this game. But as the week went on, I started thinking, and I like the plus 7.5 here for Tulane. And I actually like Tulane to pull this out. In the end, I really don't trust Pete Golding that much. Tulane has a very explosive offense. So I don't trust Pete Golding that much. And again, it's Lane Kiffin. In big games, I think Lane Kiffin is going to do something stupid to cause Ole Miss this game. So I like the plus 7.5 for Tulane. And I actually like Tulane to pull this out. My third game that I've got listed here is Miami, Texas A&M. Texas A&M, the offense last week looked a lot better under Bobby Petrino. This defense is really good. Miami, I like what Mario Cristobal's doing there. I like Tyler Van Dyke at quarterback. In the end, I like the minus 4 for Texas A&M. I expect a high-scoring game here too as well. I like what Bobby Petrino brings to that Texas A&M team. I like the minus 4, and I like Texas A&M to pull this out. My fourth game is Oregon and Texas Tech. Now, Oregon is a 6.5 point favorite. Oregon, they have a very explosive offense. Quarterback Bo Nix, possible Heisman contender. This Texas Tech team is better than people give them credit for. This game, I think, is going to be pretty competitive. Closer than people think. I think Texas Tech can keep it very, very close. I actually like the plus 6.5 here for Texas Tech. but I do expect Oregon to pull this game out late. Now, my final game is the big one. Alabama and Texas. Now, let's talk about this. So, Alabama, they're replacing their star quarterback, Bryce Young. They're replacing a lot of talent on the offensive side of the ball, a lot of talent on the defensive side of the ball. Texas has Quinn Ewers returning. I honestly have a lot of doubts for Alabama going into this game. Now, the defense, I don't have a problem with. The defense is going to look good. I expect this to be a low-scoring game. I don't expect very, very many points to be scored in this game. The key for Texas, if they want to win this game, is number one, they've got to find a way to contain Jalen Milroe, keep him in the pocket, force him to throw the ball downfield, and don't let him get outside and scramble, because if he does that, Texas is going to have a hard time because Jalen Milroe is very good with his legs. Judging last week, by watching Alabama last week against Middle Tennessee, the offensive line was shaky. Jalen Milroe, once again, he's very good with his legs. But, they were able to run the ball pretty good on Middle Tennessee. So they really didn't have to take many deep shots downfield. They took some relatively short passes downfield. And some of those short passes Jalen Milroe missed. So Jalen Milroe has to prove that he can throw the ball downfield and he can make deep, accurate passes before I can really put trust in him. So, and I believe on the other side, I believe if Quinn Ewers, because last year, Quinn Ewers gets hurt. Before Quinn Ewers gets hurt, he is torching that secondary for Alabama. I believe last year, and I said this in a previous video, I believe last year if Quinn Ewers never gets hurt, Alabama loses that game. And I believe if Quinn Ewers can step into this game and pick up where he left off last year in this game, Texas has every shot in the world to win this game. Because I really don't trust, right now at least, I don't trust Alabama's offensive line too much. I don't trust Jalen Milroe's ability to throw downfield, throw long passes, because we really did not get the opportunity to see much of that last week. So if Jalen Milroe can stay healthy, if he plays the whole game, if he plays this game like he played last year against Alabama before he got hurt, and if Texas's defense can find a way to contain Jalen Milroe, keep him from scrambling out of the pocket, force him to throw downfield, I believe Texas can win this game. And in this game, honestly, I like the +7 here for Texas. And as it stands right now, I actually like Texas to win this game. And now that I've done my Week 2 predictions, I'm going to reveal my preseason college football playoff predictions. And this is actually my preseason rankings that I made before the season I just was not able to make a video because I've been sick. But I'm going to go over this, and my number 1 is pretty obvious. It's Georgia. Georgia's not going to lose a game in the regular season. And it's because they don't play any competition besides Tennessee. I really see them winning the SEC. Whether it's Alabama they're facing, LSU they're facing, I believe they're a lot more talented than those teams as of right now. So they're my clear-cut number 1. My number 2 is Michigan. Once again, I see Michigan possibly going undefeated in the regular season. I see another Big Ten title for Michigan. This is possibly the best team that Harbaugh has had at Michigan. So I feel comfortable with them in the 2 spot in my preseason college football playoff prediction. My number 3 is Florida State. Florida State, I was very high on Florida State before the season. I'm still very high on Florida State. I expect them to make an ACC title run. Maybe be sitting there with 1 loss, but after that game against LSU and watching Clemson, I really expect them to be undefeated going into the playoff. I have them at my number 3 slot. And then number 4, I have Texas. Texas's only big game is Alabama. They have Oklahoma. If they can get by Alabama and Oklahoma, I expect them to be in the Big 12 title game. I expect them to win the Big 12, and I expect a college football playoff berth. And like I mentioned just a few minutes ago, I actually had them beating Alabama. So I have Texas in my 4 spot. And just outside my top 4, I have Penn State at number 5. Penn State's a team, I expect them to be very good. I could see this being one of James Franklin's best teams since he's been at Penn State. I mentioned in one of my previous videos that he's got to find a way to get over this Michigan-Ohio State hump. I believe this is the year that he finds a way to get over that Ohio State hump. I believe this Penn State team, I believe they can beat Ohio State. Now, I don't think they're going to beat Michigan. That's why I have them just outside my top 4, sitting at number 5. And number 6, I have Ohio State. Ohio State, new quarterback. I don't see them making the playoff. I kind of expect Ohio State this year to lose to both Penn State and Michigan. That's why I have them falling at number 6 in my playoff. So that concludes this video. I hope y'all enjoyed it. I hope to see y'all in my next video. Thank you.